Hey guys, Ross Merriam here with Michael Majors, and we're going to do a deck tech on my deck for the Versus video this week, which is Blue-Red Prowess. Now, in previous standard formats, most notably Blue-White Delver, we've seen these sort of aggressive, tricky but resilient blue decks, and they frequently are not good enough when they exist in standard because you need a lot of pieces for them to work, and they can be a little bit flimsy. But when they are good, they tend to be really good. So I always build them because they're great. And I actually was pleasantly surprised when testing this one because it has a lot of resilience, mainly due to the power of Treasure Cruise. So I am definitely going to be working on it for this weekend, and we'll see how it goes today. So as we can see up top here in the first row, we have the 12 Prowess creatures that are in the deck. And they're really just incredibly efficient creatures that are going to be the basis for us applying pressure to our opponent. Monastery Swiftspear, the new addition from Oath of the Gatewatch, Stormchaser Mage, and then Abbot, which not only is a prowess creature, but will keep the gas flowing itself with its ability. And then the other great additions from Oath, which are Slip Through Space and Expedite, giving the deck a high density of cheap cantrips that it didn't have before.
I think we should even talk about Slip Through Space a little bit more. It kind of gives you an additional burn spell, too.
Yeah, it is, I think, one of the most important additions to the deck, probably more important even than Stormchaser Mage.
I agree.
Because being able to break through stalled boards is something that can frequently be very difficult, and Stormchaser Mage helps a little bit with that being a flying creature, but most of your creatures are on the ground. Slip being able to set up a really big turn with Titan Strength or Temur Battle Rage, I think it is a really big deal. So this is not only a cheap cantrip that will trigger Prowess, but it will also have a secondary effect on the game with the ability of the card, which makes it really great, and that's why I have the full 4 copies here, as opposed to only 1 Expedite. Now, Expedite might end up deserving more copies in the deck because of everybody's favorite blue creature.
Just the coolest interaction of all time.
Jace Vryn's Prodigies. Being able to, on turn 3, play a Jace, give it haste with Expedite, and probably flip it immediately if you have cast anything on the first couple turns, or sacrifice any fetch lands, is fairly powerful. You immediately get to shrink one of their guys, and the next turn you'll probably have something to flash back. You'll definitely have an Expedite to flash back, maybe something else. I bet it'd be really sweet to plus flashback something, the next turn flashback Expedite, play a second
On
Jace,
another Jace?
flip it.
Oh, that's just dirty.
That's
Well,
so many Jaces.
it's also functionally like a counter spell for removal. Like, if you play Jace on 2 with Expedite mana up, and your opponent tries to kill it, you can just Expedite and flip it in response and counter their removal spell. And that's just, like, stupidly powerful.
That's dirty, too. Well, so Jace might seem a little out of place in the deck because it's not applying pressure to their life total. But what I think most people get wrong when building decks like this is they think of them much more aggressive than they actually are. While this deck is primarily aggressive with things like Titan Strength and these cheap creatures, in reality, what these tricky, aggressive blue decks are trying to do is just play the most efficient and powerful creatures and spells for their mana cost at every point in the curve. And Jace is just much better than anything else you can be playing in the 2-drop slot standard. As we've seen, it's basically defined standard right now.
Yep.
And it's not like the effect of Jace is bad in this deck. It's going to dig you towards more gas, more creatures. It'll dig you towards more spells, more lands. It basically will let you sculpt all of your draws for the entire game. And this deck definitely needs to draw its different types of spells in all the right ratios to be to function most optimally. And if you function less than optimally with a deck like this, it can frequently get overpowered. So Jace actually serves a really important function in the deck, even though it's not attacking. And I think you'll see that bear out in the videos today. The rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. We just have, again, the most efficient removal spells. A lot of people have Wild Slash in the main deck here over Fiery Impulse. I think just being able to clear blockers away is the most important thing you can do with this slot. So having the spell that deals with things like Eily, Reflector Mage, with
Warden of the First Tree,
with Mantis Rider,
Catacomb Sifter.
So there's a ton of 3 toughness creatures in Standard. Being able to kill them is important. And I think a little more important than being able to go to the face and deal a little bit of extra damage. Roast is our answer to big creatures like Siege Rhino and Anafenza, and while it's not as efficient as I would like it to be, being a 2-mana sorcery, it serves its role, and it's an important role in this deck because our creatures are fairly small, so we need to be able to deal with an early big creature if possible. The real backbone of the deck is this card draw package with Treasure Cruise and the Splashed Painful Truths based on our Fetch Land Battle Land mana base. Treasure Cruise, when we have a deck filled with cheap cantrips, as we've seen in Modern and Legacy before the card was banned, is incredibly powerful, and I think it is very powerful in this deck. And these decks tend to be vulnerable to high removal spell decks, which exist in this standard format in the form of Jeskai Black and various Mardu strategies. So being able to refuel Treasure Cruise after they kill your first threat or two, and to keep deploying threats, keep your foot on the gas, and always leave them behind is really important. And this deck can do that because you're not usually casting Treasure Cruise for 3 or 4. You're actually casting for 1 or 2 most of the time. So you can frequently double spell. You can cruise, draw into a threat, play that threat, and then you haven't really lost a turn in tempo in order to gas back up.
And your threat probably has haste.
Yeah. So it's actually very important that we use our Treasure Cruises efficiently in this deck, and this deck uses Treasure Cruise better than any standard deck I've seen so far. The rest of the deck is a couple one-ofs that I'm trying out that in my initial list, if you read my article last week, were 2-ofs, and I've trimmed down a little bit to make room for the 4th Fiery Impulse and the 4th Cruise, because these are just so important. But they are the 1 Temur Battle Rage and 1 Dispel, and they both serve important functions in the deck. Temur Battle Rage gives you another angle of attack. You have a lot of high-velocity spells, meaning you dig through your deck and see a lot of cards between Jace, the cantrips, Scries with Titan Strength, and the card draw spells. So it's not that hard to find a singleton a reasonable percentage of the time, and this gives you a sort of combo element, especially with Titan Strength, but you don't 100% need Titan Strength, because sometimes you can just go cantrip spell, kill your blocker, Temur Battle Rage my guy, and suddenly deal them 8 damage or 10 damage with an Abbot out of nowhere. And that element is really important for a deck like this, because it always keeps your opponent scared, and it keeps your opponent playing conservatively, and that lets you capitalize even if you don't have the Temur Battle Rage itself. So it's possible that we want more copies of this if that combo aspect of the deck is important in various matchups. And it's generally important in matchups where you're racing, or generally the less interaction is happening, the more you want to be a combo deck, which makes sense. And then Dispel is sort of the other end of the spectrum. This is a card that's going to be great when your opponent is forcing a lot of interaction on you. If they're playing a lot of Crackling Dooms, a lot of removal spells, being able to protect our creatures is really important. It also happens to be important against Collected Company.
Yeah, it's going to be really good against me, yep.
Yeah. So Dispel is an important card. Let's hope I don't get too burned by having cut one from the main deck, but as we'll see in the sideboard, we have some additional copies there.
I hope it just flips to Abbott every time.
Oh, Abbott's my friend. He'll only show me straight gas. The mana base over here is pretty typical. The one exciting new addition is Wandering Fumarole. And this gives us some added threat density if we need it going along, and it's really not that difficult to make a lot of land drops with this deck based on how many cards we draw. And so sometimes you could wear your opponent down and then just kill them with this 4 power band land. Not so great with Titan Strength because of the way layers work. If you Titan Strength a Wandering Fumarole and switch its power and toughness, regardless of the order you do it in, the switch happens later when the game tries to figure out the power and toughness of the creature. So it'll end up being a
5/4.
Yeah, 5/4.
Yeah.
Which is awkward to say the least. So, but still great with something like Slip Through Space.
Gets Battle Rage.
3-4 damage. Yeah, gets Battle Rage. So we have 22 lands here. Nothing too sort of unexpected. A couple battle lands, and this is what enables our Black Splash. It's possible I want to experiment with some more black cards, maybe a Murderous Cut over a Roast, but that's tough given the number of cruises that we have. But really, this is just about having the smoothest mana possible. That's why I have the full 4 Shivan Reefs, and I haven't really overloaded on Fumaroles, because I want the most enters the battlefield tap lands as possible. So that about does it for the main deck. Come back and check us out for the sideboard. Okay, welcome back, guys, with the sideboard here for my Blue-Red Prowess deck. A lot of it is pretty expected. We have Wild Slash and Boiling Earth for
I wouldn't call
aggressive
Boiling
decks.
Earth expected.
Okay, well, this kind of effect is expected. Normally you see it with Radiant Flames, sometimes Seismic Rupture, if the deck doesn't have a lot of colors. But as I mentioned in the main deck, this deck really wants to have the most efficient cards it can at every spot on the curve, and Boiling Earth is just the cheapest card that has this kind of effect. And the downside of Boiling Earth is that it doesn't kill things like Zergo and Swift Spear, and between 4 Fiery Impulse and 3 Wild Slash, this deck doesn't really have a problem with killing those cards. So we're really just looking to trade for Dragon Fodders and Hordling Outbursts with the most efficient spell possible. Boiling Earth does that. Not really looking to awaken it. Although, if it happens.
It could happen.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe 1 in 100 games. It'll be happy in that game. Disdainful Stroke, pretty typical. I've included more strokes than normal because I think Ramp is going to be popular in the opening weeks of the Oath standard format. So a lot of people have things like Negate. I just want to be able to counter maybe an Ulamog in addition to Ugin and Explosive Vegetation, stuff like that. Roast, again, I mentioned we need to kill big creatures, so Roast is just the most efficient spell at doing that. Possibly a Murderous Cut might find its way here. If you feel like experimenting with that, I'm all for it. And then the 2 most exciting cards in my mind are PN Kirin Nalaar and Dispel. Now, PN Kirin is sort of serving the purpose of being a big threat when I'm playing against a deck that is interacting pretty heavily with my primary game plan. And I think this one is the best because it matches up the best against 1-for-1 removal spells. And then Dispel, which is going to be really important today against Rally the Ancestors, is just gives us more action against the rally decks while also letting us shift into more of a Protect the Queen strategy, which these decks will typically do. If you're familiar with Temur Delver and Legacy, we're going to try to employ that game plan when it's appropriate, and Dispel is perfect there. So that's it for the sideboard. Come back for the games.